It is now Tuesday, and we are reading Isaiah chapters 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 4 begins with a division that wasn't exactly clean. The original authors did not create these chapter divisions. They were put in around the year 1000 AD, and so it was much different culture, much different time. When these divisions were put in. It does make it convenient for referencing, but sometimes it interrupts the flow of thought. The first couple of verses of chapter 4 belong more aligned with chapter number 3, where it was still talking about judgment upon the land. And this idea that 7 women will grab hold of one man, saying they'll provide their own food and clothes, but let us belong to you. The idea there is that there won't be many men left, and so there'll have to be 7 women coming under the household of one man. What's even more indicative of how upside down the scenario will be during this period of judgment is that they will be offering to be providers of their own food and clothes, which culturally a woman had no status. A woman owned no land. The land belonged to the men, and so therefore the food came under the male provision. And the fact that they're willing to provide for themselves is very telling of that social scenario. The reason why they want to belong to a man is to take away the shame, because perhaps they've been widowed, perhaps they are childless, and certainly they are not under the legal status of a household. And so they're willing to bring their own goods to the table just to belong to a man. Again, this is a patriarchal society, and so we have to read it in accordance to that. And then the personality in chapter 4, it changes back into something of a more optimistic tone, talking about the time of the future when things will be better. First, there's going to be these hard times. Then there's going to be ultimate good times. The crops given by the Lord will bring honor. The land will be a produce. Those who are left in Jerusalem will be called holy. God is going to wash the excrement from these women. He will rinse the bloodstains from Jerusalem. And the presence of God is going to be there, a canopy of Lord's glorious presence. By day it will shelter from the heat and give safety from a downpour. So within this there continues to be the contrast of melancholy language, but then with future hope. Then in chapter 5, here is an interesting poetic presentation. A song sung to one's love about his vineyard. My love had a vineyard on a fertile hill. He built a hedge around it, removed its stones, and planted a vine. He built a tower in the middle of it and constructed a winepress. He waited for it to produce good grapes, but it produced sour ones again. You may recall in our reading yesterday where the wording was that the vineyard had gone bad. And here again are God's covenant people, supposing to be representatives of God in this world, to show the broader world what it means to be in covenant with God, and yet they were as a vineyard that had been worked on and every effort had been made to produce good grapes and fertile soil, but yet it was turning out to be a disappointment. Again, we find in the Gospels, particularly in Luke's Gospel, the speak of Israel as a vineyard and of things going bad there during that time. And then, of course, it turns to judgment again. I'm going to make this vineyard into a wasteland. What I'm about to do to my vineyard, I'm going to remove its hedge and turn it into a pasture. Then the animals can graze there. No one's going to prune its vines or hoe it to the ground. Disaster is coming, and the language once again turns depressing. And here we'll find this language here of pride and humility. Men will be humiliated. They will be brought low. The proud will be brought low. This is an echo from our reading yesterday. There is an obvious correlation here to the pride of the people to their destruction. And of course, when we find Jesus in the Gospels, as we have walked through Luke together on this charge, we see that what Jesus is doing is exalting those who were low and bringing down those who were of high and prideful places, those of esteem. And then into chapter 6, one of the most well-known portions of the entire book of Isaiah, one of the most well-known portions of all of the Old Testament. It starts off in the year that King Uzziah dies. Uzziah wasn't a perfect king, but he was a good king, one of the few good kings of Israel. He reigned for about 50 years, and there was relative stability in the land during that time. However, the head of state has now died. There's uncertainty, and uncertainty is going to breed turmoil. But here in this context of the head of state dying, Isaiah was given this vision of heaven where the honor of God was manifest in the holy temple. Here we have the well-known oracle as the seraph and the cherub are declaring, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord." His robe, the hem of his raiment, the train filled the temple. It was, the status was according to how much of a train one had to their robe. And here, this is the train of God's robe. It filled the entire temple. These are very much honor words. When the people were worried about the political status following Uzziah's death, here, in a way, it's encouraging them to look at God, who's the one who is still reigning from above. But yet, having caught this glimpse of heaven, as we would call it, Isaiah then turns and looks at himself and says, "Woe is me." He curses himself. I am contaminated, and everybody around me is contaminated. But the seraph comes to him with a hot coal and from God's altar and touches his mouth and, in a sense, cleanses him. And here the voice says, "Whom will I send? Who will go?" And Isaiah says, "Here am I, send me." So then, as this section concludes, God tells Isaiah the message that the people must hear, but that they are going to listen, but they will not understand. They will look, but they're not going to perceive. The hearts are going to be calloused, the ears are going to be deaf, and the eyes are going to be blind. Well, this is as depressing as the message has seemed up to this point. It's going to get further depressing. And Isaiah asked the natural question, how long is this going to take? Here in verse 11. Until the cities are ruined and unpopulated, and the houses are uninhabited, until the land is ruined and devastated. Isaiah is going to have to continue this message until it's annihilated and gone, and he's going to have to give this message knowing that the people are going to be unresponsive. They will listen, but yet refuse to understand. They will look, and yet they will not perceive. And so with that, cutting off this video right at the 10-minute mark, and I will see you again tomorrow.